Hi, everybody. You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for the talk on developing your unique career path for new and recently qualified. Hopefully, most of you are done with the books now and studies at this stage, and looking forward to building your career path and a whole new professional landscape for yourselves. With that in mind, hopefully, this will add a few pointers to you and lead you down the road of a very unique kind of career path that fits you and plays to your particular strengths and your passions and everything that goes with that. I think the last few are just filtering in there now, so we'll get cracking. Like it would be in an ideal world for every chartered accountant, you want to develop a career path that is unique to your preferences and that fits your strengths. And I think I see that very much with newly quals coming through these days, that they're very particular about working in a specific sector or um, playing to certain kind of attributes and strengths that they have. We're going to talk through a variety of different things that will help and enhance that for you. My colleague, Stephen Maguire, who has joined us from the career team in CPA, is going to jump in towards the end of today as well. Just so you're familiar with Stephen, he does a lot of work with the newly quals and recent quals as well at the moment. The career team here is expanding. Karen Lanigan is also still very much involved, if you know Karen. And between the three of us, 40 years of recruitment experience and careers experience. Lean on us at any stage during the next year or two. So the objective out of this afternoon is to run through a number of things. Firstly, the job market for 2025, what that looks like. It's pretty good at the moment, so we'll go into that. Salary is always a big question for new and recently qualifieds, and how to measure that for the year ahead as literally you look at the market and get offers out there. Early career building tips, your unique selling point. What is that? Like, what have you been told by your bosses that you're very good at? Where are your weak points? All this kind of stuff. But trying to establish that unique selling point for yourself to make you more competitive in the market. Understanding your personal brand. It's a term that you're going to become very familiar with in the years ahead, and you're going to develop and build that personal brand. So we'll go into that a little bit. And a key piece to building any professional career path is the choices and decisions you make along the way. Everybody's allowed to make a mistake at some point, whether you're in your 50s, 20s, halfway through your career path. Everybody has some little pinch point that they have to maneuver and negotiate in terms of career journey, and we'll take a look at that as well. But it's always good to get off the bat as a newly qual quickly and understanding the landscape. Career project, the career project. So I always talk about a job search project and a career project. So we look at both today. The career project is the bigger picture in terms of your vision for where you want your career to go, and that kind of fits nicely into a unique career project for yourselves. But for a lot of you who are coming out of contract, maybe after 3.5 years in practice or the end of your contract, the job search project is something that is at the forefront of your mind, I suppose, and how to build a job search project in itself. And we'll step into that a little bit as well. And then, of course, like we have CA support in Chartered Accountants Ireland. Now that you're fully qualified, the full suite of services of the institute is open to you. And there's always a real temptation. I remember back to when I qualified to kind of drift away from the institute a little bit. That you want to kind of step away from that sort of student feeling and stuff. But in actual fact, getting closer to the institute at this point in your career is really important. It's the one time where you can really leverage all the services and advantages of being a fully qualified member of the institute now, and it's great timing in terms of your career. So well-being, staying safe, and all the services of CA support are there for you as well. So to get into it, the market 2025. The market has been quite good kicking off in quarter 1 this year. If any of you are kind of starting to have a look at that, you'll probably see that there's good demand for newly quals out there at the moment. A lot of you will probably be looking at traveling abroad. There's reasonable demand in Australia, Canada. London is thereabouts, but back home in Dublin, ROI, Northern Ireland, the market's pretty good. There's less inflation and stuff like that, but recruitment activity remains good, and that is across practice. Are constantly looking to retain good ACAs. Industry, there's good roles out there, and we'll have a look at a few different types. And financial services is always looking for good chartered accountants. So the message is good. We're seeing newly quals get good roles. Salaries are good as well, and we'll touch on that. And where we're seeing sectors that are particularly buoyant is the data and AI side, obviously. ESG and sustainability has taken a little bit of a plateau this year. I think there's new regulations coming out of Europe, which means there's less reporting required. But food, FMCG, energy, banking, and housing, and particularly charities, actually, in the not-for-profit space, and tech, up and down a little bit at the moment, but still healthcare very good. So you might have passions for some of these sectors, but it's worth I always think that members who keep an eye on buoyant areas and look to kind of filter their career path into the buoyant sectors within the market can accelerate their careers. So it's good to know which sectors you're passionate about and which sectors are growing and accelerating and are sectors for the future. So have a look at both if you're boxing clever versus the market. International opportunities, you mentioned, heading off to Australia, heading off to Middle East, Canada, wherever, still a strong option, still great to do a year away, looks brilliant on a CV. You pick up real maturing kind of skill sets, and you come back with some great stories regardless of what jobs you've done abroad. So always a good option. So the economic outlook is good. Irish economy is very good. But look, you got to keep a very close eye on the bigger picture in terms of Middle East, Ukraine, geopolitics, etc. So you don't have to study as much. You don't have to attend classes as much. So now, as I say at the graduating ceremony, your new job now is to tune into all this stuff and choreograph a really good career path and a professional career journey for yourself. That's the new focus. Salary levels we mentioned. Salary levels have been very strong in the last year. A bit of inflation has come in there for newly quals and recent quals, but it's just starting to plateau a little bit out. There's not as much inflation in the market this year. So what I'm experiencing or seeing with newly qual members is around the 55, 60, depending on whether you're kind of maybe small or mid-tier practice trained or big four, you can dip into the 60s in terms of base salary, and even more if you're exceptional rated one and stuff like that. So that's a rough estimate in terms of where I'm seeing salaries at. Now, there's 10% bonuses coming in there more. So the benefits packages is really where the difference can be in terms of very strong pensions and other things being covered. So have a look at the benefits packages if you're assessing roles. In saying that, salary for newly quals and recently quals, it's all about the career trajectory, getting into the right place, being surrounded by the right people. Don't make salary top of your list. Like after tax, you're kind of splitting hairs in terms of a few grand, So when you're doing your due diligence on different jobs, if you have a few different offers, it's more about the environment that's going to fit for you rather than which salary is bigger. So keep that in mind. And inflation, just keep an eye on it, as mentioned. Early career build consideration. So you're across the line now in terms of qualification. You want to find a path that's going to be unique and fit you and that you can really enjoy. Some recruiters will probably say to you, like, you need to pick your channel, because the first step into the market and the first step at post-qualification is what is going to be the trajectory for the rest of your career and life, really. I don't massively subscribe to that. I think in the first year or two post-qualification, you get a license for 18 months or so to try something a little bit different, to test out the market, to test out a role you're kind of interested in but not sure about, and stuff like that. You can do that whether you're at home or abroad. But just to mention that, I think it's a nice time where you've got a little bit of a free hand to do contracts, perm, try a different sector, etc. But do treat it like a long-term project. Do map out physically on a spreadsheet or in a file a career plan for yourself. Make time for it. And there are so many different paths. Like my experience over the last 16 years in recruitment as an ACA is that when you get over the line in terms of qualification, it can be very confusing, and hopefully this brings a little bit of clarity to things for you. And talking to more and more people will help with that clarity. But there often for newly quals, there's so many options and paths that it's very hard to decide. And for a lot of members, it starts with a little bit of self-analysis, and really understanding yourself, your passions, um, doing a SWOT analysis on yourself, doing a skill set audit, doing a career audit, knowing what you're good at, listen to people's feedbacks and so on, listen to your mentors. You should have three mentors, I believe: a family member who knows you really well, a someone you worked with, like a director or a manager who knows you really well in the workplace, and then a third person who is a someone you might get introduced to as like a CFO in a company or a sector that you're particularly interested in. Take all their advice, really honest advice from mentors is the key, and then make your own decisions from there. But be deliberate, map it out, enjoy building a new kind of career plan, a new job search project. It's well worth investing in. So self-analysis, we've mentioned, brainstorm, etc. Get to know your own strengths and weaknesses. Secondments, if you were to stay on in practice, you might look at a secondment as a way of getting a little bit of industry experience, etc. And something I've actually been saying a lot in the last week, for whatever reason, to members, the like it's important to remember, particularly in this post-COVID era, I think, where there's been a lot of kind of change up in terms of how people view careers. The pie chart of life, like the job is one little slice of it. Now it's a big one, it's significant, it's a very important slice of the overall pie chart of life, and it's an important one to get right. It's very influential, but it's not the be all and end all. You're going to have to pivot probably through your career at some point. You're going to have to adapt, switch, etc. Look at work-life balances and try and balance life with your job. You're all embarking, a lot of you are embarking on things like family and house purchase and international careers, etc. So you just need to be adaptable in relation to all of that, really, is the message there. And one of the biggest messages down the bottom here is build a network. We're going to touch on that a little bit, but just to drive home that message, that as you come out of the blocks now in terms of qualification, building a network is one of the most valuable and important things you can do as you progress your career, and not to understate that. It's going to be very important from about 3, 4, 5 years PQE, post qualified experience. You're going to be really in the thick of building a network then, but start now. Put the framework in place for building a network for yourself from the word go, and we can look at a few ways of doing that. This is just a bit of a roadmap, if you like, in terms of finding a new job and finding one that fits you really well. If you do the due diligence and build it piece by piece in terms of the job search project, by self-assessment, the career audit, the success bank, the self-reflection, before you step into the market. So know yourself before you step into the market. Identify, as we say, your USPs. So take on board the positives, the compliments, the things that your bosses have said you've done really well. Bank them, be able to articulate them in interview, in your CV, etc. Because when you're in your job search project, you kind of, as an ACA, you do have to put on the sales hat a little bit. You do need to learn how to sing your own praises, promote yourself, etc. So there's little bit of practice and there's a little bit of thinking in relation to that. Personal branding, know what your personal brand is. Start to develop a personal brand for yourself, which essentially is what people say about you when you leave the room. And that then leads into the other pieces down the bottom you can see in terms of finding a job. And a lot of you will be embarking on putting together a good CV. The Institute Careers team is different to agency, really, in a sense that we're only here for the members of the Institute. We're very much an impartial sounding board, and often a first port of call for newly qualified members just before they step out into the market and looking for a judgment on their CVs look right, or how do I approach interviews and so on. So lean on us as much as you like in that regard. That's where your subs go. This is not really readable. Don't expect you to read it, but it is a document up online that you can go and download. It's a PDF. If you're stepping into the jobs market and you're trying to find that ideal kind of path, it's a tick box exercise of about 40 or 50 things to do to make sure you're on the right path, make sure you're doing all the things that make you as lucky as possible in terms of finding that unique role suited to you. So everything from market mapping, looking at your own personal development, how to work with recruiters, how do I use LinkedIn, the networking piece, like am I doing all the right things on networking, and then the interview preparation. So it's a nice little checkbox exercise just to as you set up the project for yourself and set up your spreadsheet. We mentioned earlier on, the confusion and there's 100 different paths and roles and titles that I can look at as a newly qual out there, and what's the right fit for me. So, I mean, be careful of titles. They can often, be confusing or mean the same thing or mean something else. Like a spec will tell you 30% of the reality of a job, usually in my experience. And you have to kind of get to understand behind the scenes in terms of the other 70%. So for example, an FP&A accountant can be very similar to a management accountant or a commercial accountant role. Like they could be identical specs. So always look down to the detail and try and decipher, what the meat of a role is. And then that's probably it's just a flavor in terms of the variety of different roles you can go down as well. Everything from a tax accountant to an internal auditor to a client accountant within financial services, etc. So it varies wildly, but just take time post-qual to assimilate all this, set up your alerts on the jobs boards. Don't apply to stuff necessarily through jobs boards initially. It can go into a black hole and you don't get any answers back. But take stock of everything. Have a look at the various different roles out there. Have a look at what sectors are doing well. Have a look at the specs and what they're expecting from recent qualifieds, just kind of do a little bit of research and that's just an example. So a couple of top career tips that could be of use, 16 years in recruitment, and I've tried to distill down to one slide what's useful. Your personal, getting to know yourself is really important. Like when in the first year post-qualified, know what your weaknesses are. That's very important. Know what you're not great at. But equally, if you don't want to fix that, it's like the 80-20 rule. If you're good at something, build on it, make it a USP, grow in that direction. If there are a couple of things you need to kind of skill up on, absolutely have a look at small punchy courses to upskill on things. But that all feeds into your personal brand. Know what that is at the moment, know how to build it and grow it. I mentioned it earlier. It's what people say about you when you leave the room. So, for example, they might say, there goes Jenny, she's brilliant in terms of getting people on board, motivating people, in terms of people management, that's an absolute strength of hers. Or Sean is a fantastic analyst, he is so technically sharp. If you want something done accurately, you give it to Sean. Or Pauline is just brilliant with clients in terms of that whole relationship building. She knows how to choreograph a relationship with a client really, really well. They always come back with really good feedback, happy, etc. So it's what they say after you leave the room. And it's very important that you're aware of that as your career grows over the next few years for yourself. So personal brand is a big term. It's going to follow you in the years ahead, and just embrace it and make sure you're owning it and growing it. Good tip is to link in, or not even link in, but using LinkedIn itself, have a look at a few chartered accountants' profiles that are, if you're in PwC, 2 or 3 years ahead of you, and they might have left and gone on into industry or into financial services or stayed within practice, whatever. But have a look at a variety of members of the institute who are a couple of years down the road ahead of you and what they've done in terms of their moves, their career decisions. It's such an easy thing. Don't be shy about looking at a whole plethora of um, profiles on LinkedIn that are aligned with what you're about and where you're coming from, where you want to go. It can be a really quick, insightful way of brainstorming what might fit for you. And as I mentioned, year one gives you a license to try and test random stuff. So that was my point from earlier. Don't be shy about trying it. There was a member from CASI actually who loved technology, loved computers, IT, all that whole kind of piece, and saw the convergence with accountancy, and said, "Look, I might step into that frame and see how it fits me. If it doesn't, I've done 18 months in it. I can always bank that experience and move on." To the next role, there'll be no loss. And he's 6 years in, post qualified, loving it, director level in technology, in whole kind of ERP implementation space, and loving it, and really niche and expert in that area. So it can be very beneficial. Do think 2 moves ahead. This is an important point. So a lot of you will probably move on from practice now, for example, and take a role as we move into the summer, and then probably in 18 months or 36 months, you're going to be looking to move again. And it's very important to try and, like, this comes back to your career plan vision, what is the vision for your career 5, 8 years, 10 years down the road, notionally? Like, and does this role that you're accepting fit into that pathway? Does it give you the skill sets you need on that journey? And if I take this job, what does it mean for the next job after that? Like, is it going to fit into the right path and stepping stones on my CV? So do be cognizant of that. The career pathway, we'll pop it up actually in a slide later. It's just a nice life cycle of the chartered accountant. It kind of splits it into 4 different distinct pieces, and it'll show you maybe skills that you want to pick up along the way, just generically you might need to be aware of. Like, for example, if you move into a business partner position, like a business partnering position typically doesn't have a lot of people management with it. It's relationship building, but interdivisionally in a corporate environment. So if you go down that route and then decide you want to switch into a financial controller position, you won't have a lot of people management experience, and that could go against you. So little things like that you need to be vigilant of as you build your career. Contract options, it kind of fits in with the third bullet point there in terms of coming out of contract. You might be thinking about a travel. You might not want to commit to a full permanent role. A contract option can be a really good option for newly qualified. So don't be shy about that. If it's a maternity cover contract, or if it's a 12-month or a 6-month contract, it can get you into a sector or a company that really is aligned with your USP, your unique target career path, and if you're immediately available, sometimes you can beat the competition. Like, there's less competition getting into contracts, so that can be advantageous as well. And we are facing into a bit of a gig economy, which is the buzzword at the moment. An example on that note, actually, there was 3 friends came back from the States, just having spent a number of months over there. I think they were working actually post qualifying last May of last year. They're all ex-Big Four. They came back to Dublin, and they're all planning on heading over to London to make their fortune in the city and, like, pick up permanent jobs over there. But in the meantime, they're back home now, and, like, they didn't want to rattle around for doing nothing for 3, 4, 5 months as they kind of plan that journey and talk to recruiters over there and try and get the London thing going. So they've looked at 3 and 4 month contracts here in Dublin, which we've managed to fix them up with. And what that does for their CV, it keeps nice continuity on there. It'll add another little dimension. It shows proactivity. They'll pick up a skill set. They'll have another story to talk about when they go and sit for interview in London. So again, contracts can be really beneficial at interludes in your career, just to make that point. And just another little tip there is on the Accountancy Ireland back issues. If if you didn't get to read them as you were qualifying, you probably have a stack there. A friend, a colleague of mine back in the day when he qualified, he was getting the train to work every day. And he decided after he qualified that he was going to go back and read all the Accountancy Ireland issues, like all 20 of them or something. So you don't have to do that, but do have a look at the movers and shakers in the back of Accountancy Ireland and what's going on in terms of those moves. So career audit, we mentioned, this is really just a guide on taking stock and having a look at your successes as you plan your kind of interview question. What's the plan for the next 5 years, or what's your 5-year plan kind of thing? What to see, like, a lot of you will have worked on maybe audit jobs and, done the kind of generic audit stuff that I would have done as I was training, or accounts prep as your training. And it's hard to make it kind of different or whatever. But just think about the clients you worked with, think about the decisions you had to make, the tough jobs that you had to work on, and so on. And they're the stories you're going to carry into an interview. So what worked, like what were the challenges? What were you complimented by your bosses for? These are all the kind of the wins, the stories, the value add. They show your character, your personality. So they bring to the fore all your soft skills, and they lead to those little achievement stories that you bring with you into interviews. Mentioned the career plans. We've got the job search project and we've got the career project. So building a career plan is very important. It's the longer play, and it's something to start thinking about now. You need to have a vision for your career notionally. It might change in 3 years' time. You're going to have to adapt and tweak that along the way. So have a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, do a skill set audit at various intervals and sort of see, right, according to the career pathway, I probably need to get a bit of people management experience, or I need to upskill on this new technical knowledge. If I want to go down the sustainability route, I need to do a course here, etc. So just keep an eye on that. CPD is going to come into that as well, very particularly. So make sure you stay on your CPD. Mentors we mentioned. It's a good exercise to have a spreadsheet and to write down your career plan. It makes it more alive. And we mentioned the brand, and just habitualize it. And there's a career plan link there at the bottom. You'll be getting these slides. I think Chris is going to send them out afterwards anyway, so you'll have them all, and the links all in them. So research the market for yourself. It's good to do this whether you're looking for a job or not. Just keep, I always find that the cleverest members of the institute who get the career paths that they want to build for themselves, whether that's CFO in Greencore, or whether it's kind of just a nice middle management role in an SME that allows them to live their life and all the other things going on in their life. Like, the cleverest ones are the ones who always keep their ear to the ground. They're always kind of watching the market. They understand what's going on. They might talk to a lot of recruiters. They're very tuned in. So, boxing clever, as I call it, with the market is important. Know yourself, know what the market's doing, and know where you stand in relation to the market. I do talk to a lot of FCA members who are very experienced, ton of experience, and they're looking to pivot their career, but they're very out of touch with what's going on in the market itself. You guys, as newly quals, are all talking to each other, or should be. You're all networking among yourselves, and you're all talking about what's going on in the market and what people are doing. So do keep that going, tune into it. The job sites, LinkedIn, alerts, they're all obvious things to be doing as you move through your job search project. Knowing what sectors are on the rise. Like, when it comes to building a unique career path for yourself, I do think you have to play to your passions and kind of identify 3 different sectors, for example, that you're really passionate about. Like, it could be sport. If you're extremely sporty, it could be like, I want to get into something as a chartered accountant in sport. Look at Hugo Keenan, one of our most prominent chartered accountants, recently qualified actually last year, playing rugby for Ireland. So sport could be something you want to you want to foster your career in. So now you're going to spotlight that and you're going to start planning your career path and plan in that whole direction. Doesn't mean it happens today or tomorrow or next year or the year after, but you're keeping a very close eye and spotlight on that, or technology or charity. A lot of members will decide that they want to use their ACA qualification altruistically, and they want to move through the next 20 years in charities or not for profits, and that's very particular to them. So, that's what we mean about building a unique career for yourself, and it takes a bit of planning and choreographing, um, and follow the news and be proactive. Like if you're a very ambitious person, you might be following like what sectors are growing really well, and try and align your skill sets and your path with those, so that you hit the accelerator and you kind of go with that rising tide, and you manage to get to heights in sectors that are growing really well and need good chartered accountants. Personal branding. We mentioned earlier on, LinkedIn as a tool for this is key. So LinkedIn is essentially the appendix to your CV. It's literally paper clipped onto the back of your CV at this stage. So it needs to be as professional and as reflective as your CV itself. John Murray is a photographer, a professional photographer associated with the Institute. He does a lot of talks for the ACA professionals. You might be familiar with him. He does great headshots. Well worth getting John on board to do a very professional photo for you. Make sure your ACA qualification is prominent in your LinkedIn profile. Make sure it echoes your key achievements and the value add that you're bringing to the table as a prospect. Keywords is everything in LinkedIn. So make sure as you go down through your LinkedIn profile, it's a bit different to your CV, because it all operates on keywords. So just be vigilant of that. If you need a LinkedIn document in terms of how to use LinkedIn, just shout. We can send that on to you as well, in the careers team here. Be active, get joining groups, be visible. The green swoosh that goes on your photo in LinkedIn, if you're actively looking for a new job and stuff like that, I'm very slow to recommend or to put people off using that. That's kind of your own. It can be nice to test it for 3 or 4 days and see what happens. But follow companies that are on your hot list of top 10 companies that you're really passionate about and very interested in. So you can literally click the follow button on them, start connecting in with people in those companies, and keep a close eye and expand your network within those companies initially. Connect, share, like, post, be delighted to be on LinkedIn. All that kind of stuff is very important. We actually had a speaker in from LinkedIn a couple of years ago in the Institute, and he was brilliant, saying that everybody was delighted and honored and stuff. But it's, LinkedIn is a fantastic tool in terms of online networking. The offline networking is very important. And there was a comment recently, actually, just in relation to new and recently qualifieds, who are just so brilliant in terms of the online space. But it's very important. And this comes back to my point earlier on about getting close to the Institute. And now is the perfect time as a newly qual to get really close to the Institute and to leverage it. Go to events, go in person. There's nothing more powerful than in-person networking and chatting. Networking is as simple as like just chatting to people. Like I think people are put off by networking because it's so formulaic and you feel like you're on stage kind of acting and stuff in terms of like networking is just going along to events and just I have a take on it in terms of reconnecting with colleagues, catching up with people and just having chats, coffees, and chatting about careers and, life trajectory. That's a little bit waffly. But the point being, it's really important as new and recently quals to get along to events. The ACA professionals, we've got there's one coming up I'll highlight shortly, but there's no substitute for meeting people in person and having a chat. And you're all part of the one institute now, and you're all on the same kind of trajectory. So to share information and in terms of keeping your ear to the ground, it's the top of your list to do. Completely over laboring that point. Invest in your network. Okay, so yeah, just to reiterate, it's the spine of a successful career. So just to drive that home, start now, start early, and enjoy the networking in the years ahead. Ex-colleagues, pick their brains, chat, like, share, discuss, LinkedIn, join groups, and get involved. Everything I just said, basically, in terms of that slide. And I say there, it becomes a platform for your move as you head towards an FCA. That's what I say to FCAs, where 10 years goes by very quickly when you become an FCA. And the move you make at that senior level of your career path is all predicated on your network. Just to highlight that to you, 10 years goes very quickly. If you're making a move 10 years into your career, it's going to 80% likelihood be predicated on your personal network. So you need to start building that now and being vigilant to that. This is the career pathway I alluded to earlier on. It splits the generic life cycle of a chartered accountant into 4 different kind of areas, everything from, young professional, developing, expert, and leader. And it'll show you the various skill sets. If you drill into that on the chartered accountant's website, this hub, it'll show you the skill sets you might want to be cognizant of as you build your career and your unique career. You might want to cherry pick certain skills you need to pick up to get to the next level. Equally, then, the careers team in the institute, like, use us as a sounding board, as I mentioned. There's a variety of different services associated with us. We're not like an agency where we're just kind of doing recruitment and client interaction. There's all sorts of advice in terms of interview preparation we can do with you. There's the mentor program that largely Stephen looks after, and will partner you up with mentors if you pick them online. Then we have the just general career coaching and advice. So if you're confused and wondering, as a lot of, I've actually over the last 6 months, I've spoken to quite a few newly quals who are very confused. It's probably fair, I shouldn't use the word disillusioned, but some members do come out of qualification and they're a little bit disillusioned as to, it's been a tough journey through student life and traineeship and getting over the line in terms of the qualification itself. And I can identify with that. I didn't exactly breeze through all my exams, but it's a phenomenal qualification to have. And sometimes, you just want to park the 3.5 years and kind of go, right, I want to do something a bit different. Talk to us if that's the case, and you're trying to completely rethink your association with accountancy or whatever. Like the ACA qualification can be used in so many different directions, and it's a phenomenal passport. Not only are we the biggest professional body on the island of Ireland now at this stage, it is one of the top business qualifications you can have in this country and abroad. So if you're trying to figure out how to use it uniquely in the next step for your career, and you want to do something a little bit different, talk to us at any stage. We're here for you, myself, Stephen, and Karen. Is this the last slide? Nearly. So yeah, this is kind of just to reiterate. Make time to plan your career. Don't wait. Don't drift. Don't just kind of lump for the next financial accounting role that comes along and kind of, drift and kind of fall into your next job. Take ownership of it, plan it, gain insights into what you really want by talking to people, by self-analysis, by talking to mentors, by talking to peer groups, just lots of chatting. That's the key here. If you want to figure out the right route for you, and the title of this is about, developing a unique career path that fits you. So if you want to find what fits you, you got to talk to lots of people and get really honest. Sometimes other people know you better than you know yourself in terms of what they can see in the workplace and so on. So take people's advice on board, bank it, and start using that to play to your strengths and choreograph your career path, your unique career path. Strong CV, very, very important. It's the sales document. We could do a whole different talk and presentation, and we do, on CV and interview prep and so on. So, if you're building a CV or you want a template, we'll send that on to you as well. Get in touch on that front. Know your USP. If you're trying to figure out your USP, talk to us. We can help figure that out by talking through your experience and help you articulate that a little bit. And then do become an expert on the market. A bit like a recruiter, you almost, as you step into the market as a newly qualified, you almost want to be 80% recruiter in terms of your knowledge of the market and how to understand it and how to operate that. This is the finally, this is the upcoming ACA professionals group. You'd probably be familiar with the ACA professionals. A lot of you might be members of it. They do phenomenal events, meetings, webinars. Really important that you become involved with that in the years ahead as your peer group, just to keep the ear to the ground. This as a prime example of the very different kind of stuff they do. First-time buyers, if any of you are looking to get into the housing market in the years ahead, hopefully, it's a really good talk coming up on the 19th of March. But the ACA professionals is getting a lot of prominence. It was called the Young Professionals in years gone by, so that's probably how you'd know it as well. It's just a rebrand. That's it from us. Final message. I think if I was to distill it down to one small little point in terms of building a unique career for yourself, I would say start off by selecting 3 sectors that you're really passionate about or you're very, very interested in. Spotlight them, follow them, pick companies and organizations in that space and start networking into that direction, connecting with people, talking to people, and making it your focus in the years ahead. And I think that you can't go too far wrong in terms of building a unique career that way. But look, we're here to help you as a first port of call. If you're looking at building a career, or you're looking at difficulties in career, or if you're literally looking at the job search project I mentioned and you want to put you in touch with clients of ours and on the whole recruitment front, in touch with myself and Stephen Maguire. Karen Lanigan is there as well. And we'd be delighted to talk to you at any stage in the year ahead. So that's it from me. There's probably a little bit of Q&A. There might be a few questions coming online through various forms. And Stephen, I know I didn't do a formal intro, but it'd be good to just kind of mention yourself in relation to the newly quals. You work a lot with them. I've probably left out loads of stuff. Would you have a take on any of the things there, or anything I've left out, or anything, Stephen, that would be worth mentioning?
Thank you very much. So, hello everybody. My name is Stephen. Just apologies up front. My camera on my laptop just isn't working today, so I do apologize on that. But yes, I work very, very closely with the newly quals, and the only thing I would say is just 2 quick things to add. Is that one, in a lot of conversations I have with newly qualifieds, there is a bit of a worry or concern that because they haven't worked in an area during the traineeship, that they can't really apply to roles in that space or do anything. And the one thing I will caveat by saying is that each one of you listening now have just recently passed your exams. Those exams are hard, they're difficult, and they do set you up to have flexibility in your career. So just because your traineeship wasn't spent in a particular area, like say you did tax and you're interested in auditing, go for it. You know, it's worth knowing that you have those skills, that they do exist. You just need to get the experience to utilize them. So don't worry about things like that, and reach out to one of us. We can talk you through it, and we can kind of work on your CV to highlight the areas that will be beneficial. The second area is, if you are applying to roles, is to currently be aware that obviously, as a lot of people have heard, there's a big push towards AI at the moment. So a lot of larger entities and larger employers are using an AI kind of screening process. So when you're applying to jobs, it's really important to take an additional kind of 5-10 minutes and go through your CV and make sure some of the keywords are present in your CV. That just means, like, if they're looking for certain skill sets. So if you worked with, certain financial statements, anything like that, make sure that they're in your CV, because when the AI screens it, your CV will pop up. And a very, very important thing is having your CV read by a person. So just take an extra 5-10 minutes per application to do that. It will make a world of difference to kind of the feedback you get and getting your CV seen. So they're the two big things I would say at the moment. And then obviously we're here to support in any way possible. So feel free to drop us an email. We can set up individual one-on-one calls, go through everything in a lot more detail, and help you with anything. So we're always here for that.
Yeah, really good points, actually, Stephen. Um, and just looking at questions here, actually online, there was one question from David who's wondering if it's possible to get hard copies of the Accountancy Ireland by post. So I think once you register as a fully qualified member of the institute, I think they come through automatically. But I just think it's really worthwhile just flicking back through them and catching up on what's been happening in the accountancy landscape. I'm just wondering, is there any other questions coming through? Maybe not.
There's one about what's the optimum employer pension contribution rate as part of a
Mm.
benefits package,
Oh, yeah.
and I think it varies completely. I think there is no, it's personal. Some people have a kind of very set figure on what they'd like, and I think it depends on what stage of career you're at. I think the norm, and Dave, you can correct me, the norm is kind of between 5 and 7.5, I think usually.
Hmm.
So that kind of should be your base marker, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, there's no strict rule on pensions, really. It depends on the sector and company, but like in financial services, it's usually a little bit better. For example, you can get 10% within financial services and so on. So, um, yeah, that's
And
yeah.
on pensions, just as we're talking about, there is also, just to make everyone aware, that we are later this year about to go into the auto enroll process, which means everyone's going to be enrolled in some form of pension scheme by their employer. So that's just state mandated thing to ensure people have pensions. So just to be wary of that. You're probably going to hear more of that from your HR teams closer to kind of September, October time this year.
Yeah, good point. Great. So look, if there's no further questions, guys, thanks for joining us today. And as mentioned, the careers team is here for you at any stage in your career journey, whether newly qual or later on in your career. We're always keen to have a chat with you at some point. Sorry, there was one further question there from Owen. Sorry, Owen, I missed your question. If you want to reiterate it, actually. Oh yeah, how many times a year is induction? Oh yeah, a lot of you will be doing your CA diary up at the moment as you head towards getting that file and qualifying. Induction being graduation, I think you mean. So I think it's twice a year. So one in kind of coming into the summer, and then another one. If you've done a master's, you've only done a 3-year training contract. So there's one in around November as well. So I think it's twice a year. Um, yeah, and look, it's great to go along to that. It's great networking. As you said, it's a really enjoyable day. It's not really about you; it's about your parents or your loved ones celebrating with you. So it's a great gig to do if you can. Look, it's a pleasure having you on board today. It was good attendance today, and we look forward to speaking to many of you in the months ahead, myself and Stephen and Karen, and do stay in touch. Link in with us on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest way as well. And, speak to you soon.